Okay, Derbyites, Emmy voting is just about over. So we're here to talk about the comedy races. I'm here with Chris Beachum and Daniel Montgomery. And just before we went live, I figured out that we all have Blackish in our #1 spot for Best Comedy Series. Veep has won the past 2 years. So Daniel, why do you think Blackish is going to win this year?
It's a little bit wishful thinking on my part. I have a soft spot for Blackish. I'm also wondering if Veep is going to be the kind of show that keeps, rolling along, winning after, again and again and again. It is in its 6th season now, which is pretty late for a show to keep on rolling on with multiple wins. The last 2 shows that won multiple, Modern Family and 30 Rock, they all won for their first seasons. Modern Family's first 5 seasons, 30 Rock's first 3 seasons. So maybe it's just time for them to move on from Veep to something, the younger, sexier model.
And Chris, why do you think Blackish is going to win?
It's a combination of reasons. One, I just didn't want to have Veep, all season long in #1. But cultural relevance along with comedy. I think the combination of the two certainly is not going to hurt. And I think it was Anthony Anderson in the interview he did with Daniel a few weeks ago, talking about how they, and also Zach interviewing Kenya Barris, the creator, along with Anthony, talking about how when they even started the show, one of the first names out of their mouths was Norman Lear, who has been made a comeback this year with One Day at a Time. But he had all of those socially relevant but very funny comedies in the 70s and won quite a few Emmys himself, is in the Hall of Fame. So just all of that together made me think maybe this is the time. Now listen, if it doesn't get in for writing or directing again, which it's never been in, I'll drop it like a stone. So Blackish people, let's, if you want to stay in my #1 slot, you're going to have to get one or the other, maybe both.
Well, they made a great move by only submitting 1 episode on the ballot, and that's the Lemons episode.
Well, and last year with Hope. So right. And we all thought that was a lot to get in for probably at least writing. Veep. Have people been talking about Veep as much this season? It just feels like they haven't.
Yeah, I don't know, because we at Gold Derby we're doing recaps of it. We talk about it in terms of Emmy. So in our bubble, it's still really big, but I don't know about outside the bubble though.
Well, I mean, it's always been a niche show. Like, it feels like a big show because it's done so well at the Emmys over the years. But it's considering how much broadcast TV has dominated comedy, unlike cable, which is a drama, which has gone more to cable in recent years. Veep is by far the lowest rated show ever to win Best Comedy Series. And so I'm not sure how much of the wider consciousness it has. But it's interesting thinking about how when it finally won Best Comedy Series, a little bit like Blackish, it took it a while to get into those writing and directing categories. It didn't get in until year 3, writing nomination, and then it won for year 4. So Blackish, even though it didn't get in last year, should have gotten in for Hope. I think everyone was expecting to get in for Hope. If it can't get in a writing nomination for Lemons, I really don't think it can win Best Comedy Series. So that's going to be the canary in the coal mine to watch. But yeah, I'm not sure what the public, the broader consciousness is for Veep. Although the TV Academy consciousness is going to be slightly different. I feel like there's a lot more viewership for Veep there than there probably is in the general public.
And what about some of these other shows that are really, really in the running? I mean, we kind of broke it down to Blackish versus Veep, but there's also Atlanta, there's Silicon Valley, Kimmy Schmidt, Master of None, Modern Family. I mean, do any of these really have a shot? Atlanta, I guess, would, because it won with the Golden Globe and the WGA and the PGA.
Atlanta will have I don't think it's going to have any problem getting in for comedy series, probably directing, maybe writing. Donald Glover will get in, but where does it go after that? I don't see it getting beyond 5, 6 nominations. So I think that's going to make it. And I don't know that it's, I mean, you look at your middle-aged and older Academy voters, I don't know that it's going to win Best Comedy Series. I've got 6 of last year's 7 in. I after all these years, dropped Modern Family out of my 7. I've got the six returning plus Atlanta coming in. I'm not totally sold. I think that 7th slot is probably either Modern Family or Transparent, which got dropped this year. Remember, kind of surprisingly, on the SAG Ensemble side. The other shows I think that have a shot at, I mean, there's a lot of shows that could come in. Yesterday's TCA, we were just talking, Fleabag did well. It did, got in at the BAFTA Awards as well. So I think that's one we might be sleeping on a little bit. I think Better Things, that did well with TCA. That could come in, like Louis, who produces the show, and Pamela Adlon created it and writes in it, stars in it. The Good Place did well with TCA, which thrilled me. That would be in my top 2 or 3, I think, of comedy series personally. What was the other one? Let's see here. Well, Norman Lear, One Day at a Time. Netflix is, on fire. More of a traditional 3-camera comedy. Don't totally rule that one out.
One Day at a Time in particular, I just finished, I hadn't finished watching all the episodes, and I just caught up with the rest of the season. It feels like a shame if this show gets kind of lost in the shuffle. If this had been the same exact show, the same exact performances, the same exact writing 20 years ago, we would be complaining about Justina Machado and Rita Moreno winning 5 Emmys in a row. They have the tapes, they have the writing is there, the themes are there. It's basically multi-camera Blackish in terms of how it's dealing with these issues about this Cuban family. So I really hope and having Norman Lear's name on it can't hurt. I know, Chris, you've mentioned that there's a Netflix effect that seems to be taking place. Like if you think a Netflix show is on the bubble, maybe move that up because the way it did at SAG, almost all the TV awards were run by Netflix. There's just something in the water over there that's keeping those shows big in the public consciousness and in the awards consciousness.
Netflix could have 3 comedies nominated with One Day at a Time and Kimmy Schmidt and Master of None. 2 years ago, they weren't even a player. I mean, House of Cards, I guess, and Orange is the New Black, but how things change.
Well, I like the fact that you mentioned SAG. We learned a lot off of SAG this year, and not only does Netflix have the product, tons of product, but they know how to campaign. And some of these other newer ones still haven't figured out quite how to do that. They're learning and they're figuring it out. But in this day of hundreds of shows, you have to stand out.
Mm-hmm. One thing you always say, Chris, is you look for nominations that we weren't really expecting. And if Atlanta gets in for Brian Tyree Henry, I think that's a huge sign that Atlanta could win. If, like you said, Blackish gets in for Lemons, I mean, that's good. But if it also gets in for Lawrence Fishburne or some of the other supporting cast, that would be something to look for as well.
And I think we need to not underestimate also now the casting category. No matter how old a show you are, Veep has won it the last 2 years in a row. And every winner of a casting award for the last 2 years, drama, comedy, and then movie miniseries, every winner of those has gone on to win its program award for the last 2 years. So I'm starting to think if that trend continues, we could see casting become as important, if not more important, than writing and directing, at least getting a nomination.
Wow. So Chris, is Julia Louis-Dreyfus going to win number 6?
You know how much we like her and love having her on a chat every summer. I kind of hope not. I mean, I don't like people breaking records and stuff. I mean, especially there's so many good performances, good people on TV. I just hate to see that. But anyway, yeah, I've got her in first. Usually if there's an upset, there's one person, like it's either A or B, and the voters, if they really want something different to happen, they'll choose B for a change. But when you've got Allison Janney and Tracy Ellis Ross and Ellie Kemper and Lily Tomlin and Issa Rae and just on and on and on, I don't
Tracy
see
Ullman.
I don't see. Yeah, I took Tracy out finally, believe it or not. I don't see that one contender that takes Julia down.
Yeah, it's same for me. I have Julia in first place sort of by default. And in the comedy series race where Veep is sort of the default assumption for best comedy series, it's won twice in a row. I wanted to go another direction, and Veep, or in Blackish for me, was that obvious other choice to go to. And best comedy actress, though, I look at this list and I think, well, if it's not Julia, then it could be Tracy, it could be Allison, it could be Lily Tomlin. You know, I don't know where to go if not Julia. And that kind of split of support in terms of who else could possibly win, you know, could just help Julia win again.
Yeah, Allison Janney, she made a very, very bold move going from supporting to lead. And it's going to be a fun race if they both get in. I mean, she may not get in, but if they both get nominated, it'll be really fun to see what happens because they're both Emmy favorites. I mean, Allison Janney has won 7, right? And Julia has won 7 acting.
Right.
So one of them.
They're both one short of the record.
It's such a fun race to watch.
Well, I'm going to list 6 ladies that aren't even in the 6 I just named. That, let's say those 6 weren't even in existence. You wouldn't bat an eye if the lineup, based on TCA and other, you know, BAFTA and Globes and SAG, you wouldn't bat an eye if the 6 were Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Tracy Ullman, Lita Dunham could make a comeback for the finale, Minnie Driver, Kristen Bell, Gina Rodriguez, Pamela Adlon. These are all people that Justina Machado could have gotten in any other year. And one or two of them might get in this year.
Katie Mixon for American Housewife. I mean, the list goes on and on. Rachel Bloom.
Yeah, I love the fact that women are really just, I mean, you look at it in every single lead and supporting race across the board, they're just dominating television right now.
Mm-hmm. If I was a voter, I think I would vote for Ellie Kemper. I think she's just fantastic on that show. But part of me, I'm the opposite of Chris. I love when records are broken and made. So part of me is also kind of rooting for Julia to take home 6 in a row. That's never, ever happened.
I'm very selective about it. I'm sort of in between. I don't mind a record being broken if it's that kind of show. You know that this is going to be a show that's going to be talked about for decades. Like a Breaking Bad. If a Breaking Bad, you know, broke a record. If Bryan Cranston, for instance, had won 5 for Best Drama Actor, I'd have been fine with that because I feel like that's the kind of performance we're going to be looking back in 20 or 30 years that will be like, yeah, that makes sense as the most awarded drama actor performance in history. I'm not sure I feel that way about Veep. And because they're, you know, as Chris mentioned, this field is so stacked with talented actresses on great shows, you know, new shows and returning shows. The idea of Julia Louis-Dreyfus, you know, being the only woman awarded for 6 years, I'm not sure how that sits.
I just think it speaks to, not that she doesn't, look, it's all subjective anyway. So nobody is saying she doesn't deserve it. It's just a matter of there's lots of good people on television or good shows, whatever category you're talking about. When you're talking about records, I hated it when Daily Show was doing that. So I think it speaks more to laziness than it does a voter actually choosing that person or that show. That's what I don't like about it. They just go, oh, check mark. You know, they don't think about the fact that, hey, this one's good too, and this one's good too, and you know, records are being set here for no particularly strong reason.
And voters don't rank them anymore as they used to. Now they just pick a winner. And that started, I think, last year. And Julia won in the old system and she won in the new system. Whereas Allison Janney, she had previously won in the ranked system, but last year in the supporting race, she did not win that. So that, again, kind of favors Julia. But let's switch over to comedy actor because there's really, I think, only 10, 11 guys in the running here compared to actress where there was like 25. But Jeffrey Tambor's won twice in a row, and some people think he's going to win 3. I'm more on the Anthony Anderson bandwagon for Blackish. I think Blackish is really going to have a breakthrough this year. Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm also with Anthony Anderson. I am a little wary of Donald Glover, more here than in comedy series. I don't see Atlanta winning comedy series, although, again, as you mentioned, the new voting system, you know, we've seen new voting systems throw us for a loop, like Moonlight, the Oscars. That's a preferential ballot. That's only
I'm pretending that doesn't have it.
but that's a preferential ballot. It's only a few years old. No one saw it coming based on the evidence we had, based on the conventional wisdom we gathered over the years. This voting system is even younger, so who knows? Last year, there were some strange, unexpected winners. Donald Glover is feels like kind of a Rami Malek type, who's this breakout on this edgier, kind of a little bit niche kind of show. Tatiana Maslany was also that way, so he could definitely win. But yeah, but right now, I think if Blackish has as good a year as I think it's going to have, which I'm currently predicting it's going to win Best Comedy Series, I think it's going to bring Anthony Anderson along.
That's what I've got. And I hate for us all to be agreeing. There's not that anybody dislikes Jeffrey Tambor, but there does seem to be a fatigue with him winning. I don't think he's going to be setting any Julia type records. He hasn't won at the Globes in a while. Didn't win at SAG this year, so I don't know that that's going to continue. I don't really. I've got Donald Glover in third, but they've proven over and over and over again at the Emmys, if you give them an option of giving somebody like a writing award, like Louis C.K. or Aziz Ansari last year, they're going to take that route. So I think Donald Glover has a much better shot at writing or directing than he does acting. Look out for William Macy, two-time SAG winner for this role, past two-time Emmy winner. We've seen under this new system, Ben Mendelsohn, Hank Azaria last year. If you give them the option of what they consider a film actor, they'll sometimes take that option. So that's a possibility. The one that Marcus has been laughing about forever with me is Hank Azaria. You can all mark it. He's getting into 6. There's not 5 people more popular with Emmy voters currently, like on the ballot, than him, Julia, Allison Janney, Margot Martindale. I mean, he won last year for Ray Donovan. So I think he's got 6 Emmy wins, and he's on the ballot like 4 times this year. So I mean, this is not as nearly as strong as comedy actress. I think he's getting in.
I just don't know who to take out. That's my thing. I have the strong 6. I mean, 4 you mentioned, plus I have Thomas Middleditch coming back, plus I have Aziz Ansari coming back. Who do I take out to put in Hank Azaria?
I don't have Middleditch in. Yeah, He's only gotten in 1 time.
I have the same issue as Marcus. I want to put Hank Azaria in, but I haven't decided who to take out.
It doesn't matter if they've seen the show. It doesn't matter. I
agree with you.
I just got word. We've been asking this question for a few days. I'm breaking news to both of you, as well as whoever's watching this. We found out, on the program side, it's unlimited how many people you can vote for, because Tom's a member and on he gets to vote for programs. But we didn't have confirmation from an actor in the acting branch until just now. They're also unlimited, so it's going to really help out people that are just familiar to them and that they just like. Doesn't matter if they've seen the show. Hank Azaria is just somebody they like, and
his last name starts with an A, which if he weren't beloved enough, they're going to see his name before most of these other contenders on the ballot.
Well, yes and no. I think they get them on the ballots that are printed or available on the actual Emmy website, like we downloaded. They're all A to Z. But from my understanding, the last 2 or 3 years, the voters themselves, when they log in and go to vote, it randomizes. So this category might be A to Z. Comedy actors might be Z to A. It randomizes various categories, so you can't totally go by that.
But you'll still have half of the ballots where he's.
I don't know that they don't have multiple ways of randomizing, though.
I think it would be when you have this many. I don't know for sure, but when you have this many contenders, if I were a voter, I would be very frustrated if it weren't at least alphabetical one way or the other, because when you have hundreds of candidates in a category, and even if you know who you want to vote for, let's say Hank Azaria, and he's not in the A's and it's randomized in some other way, it's like you can't even find the person you want to vote for.
It might alphabetize by show for some people.
That could, Brockmeyer also helps him.
But it could be Z to A on that too.
That's true, but then it's still
we don't know. It would take us finding like 5 different actors, and then what one tells us about this category, another one tells us something else. So just a couple of other names. Ted Danson, I think, based on what we said earlier about The Good Place, he's gotten in for several different projects over his career. It's not like they just love Cheers. Is in a situation like we just said, unlimited situation, does Jim Parsons come back? Does Will Forte come back? They're both popular.
I think it will help shows that are very, very popular. Like Jim Parsons is a great example. Like if you're going down your ballot and just checking everyone you like, which you can do now, you're going to check people like Jim Parsons. You're not going to check someone from a show that you haven't seen. That's just my theory. We won't know till the nominations come out, though.
Well, we won't know then either because we don't know what was in a person's mind. I think it's either or. I think it's they love that show, or like let's say it's Big Bang Theory, like you just mentioned, fine. But they may just love Hank Azaria. I don't care what he's in. Click.
Right. Yeah. I think Margot Martindale is going to get in for comedy actor too, I believe.
But it's interesting because you know, we were talking about how this would help sort of, you know, the broadly popular shows, and I wonder, you know, if you get a fatigue sentiment, as we mentioned with potentially Jeffrey Tambor winning, I don't think anyone thinks he won't get nominated. But if you have someone like a Jim Parsons who has won 4 times and he's been nominated so many times, they already dropped him out. I wonder if you could mark down 15 people. You might see him on your ballot and go like, he's got enough and move on, you know, even if you watch the show and like the show. So, you know, it's same thing with Modern Family for Best Comedy Series. That could fall out if enough people say, you know, enough, let me try and find something else that I can check off. Or, you know, if you can do as many as 10 and you don't have to fill up a whole 10, you know, even though you can go beyond 10, you might just say, okay, Modern Family maybe would have been my 8th, but I think I'll stop at 7 or something like that.
I have heard from one voter that said, going back to programs, but now that we know that it's on acting too, everybody's going to have a different mentality. Some will check everything that they remotely like. This person was voting in programming, and they said in every category they voted for in programming, they went with 3 or 4 or 5, somewhere in that range. Mm-hmm. They wanted to be more strategic because they felt like that would counterbalance somebody to mark 20. We're going to have, it's going to take us, I wish they would just leave the rules, whatever they are, the same.
They change every year.
Like 3 to 4 years so we can get our footing. We don't know. We don't know.
Right.
Yeah, we can never acquire enough data. Like this year, my predictions are all going to be about, you know, just I shouldn't confess this, but it's going to be guessing. And then what I'm really going to be looking at is trying to gather data about the winners and seeing what we can extrapolate so we can try to predict next year until they change half of their voting procedures again.
Well, let's also talk about these supporting races. Last year, Kate McKinnon won. It was the first time, I think, since, what, 1993 that a regular SNL performer won. And then on the male side, supporting actor, it was Louis Anderson for Baskets. I was so happy when he won. This year, I have Kate winning again for Hillary Clinton and Kellyanne Conway.
That's safe now that we know that they will go that route.
And then I have Alec Baldwin winning as well. So Chris, do you think Kate's safe? Do you think Alec is safe? Because I'm almost ready to call it a lock.
We need some locks, I'm going to tell you. I think Kate is more of a lock. We'll talk about supporting actor in a second. Just who's in supporting actor, it's a little more dangerous for him because there's some people we know they love. Supporting actress, I've got Kate McKinnon. I think she's very safe. But then the 5 I've got with her, really only 2 I would say are in. Judith Light and Anna Klumsky have proven, at least last year. Joy Kukowski fell out last year, but she had such a good season. I think she'll come back.
I do too.
But I've got Rita Moreno and Andrea Martin. I think they're so beloved in the industry, and they're on shows I think the viewers might be watching. You know, certainly wouldn't be surprised if Gabby Hoffman came back, but again, I think that show is declining at the Emmys. Now in this name check mess marking, you might have Mayim Bialik come back. Julie Bowen could come back. Beyond that, though, does anybody jump out?
Well, one thing that one person I'm predicting for a nomination at the moment, which is kind of a leap of faith, but it's someone Kate McKinnon needs to worry about, is Leslie Jones. She's a standout on SNL. Her star is on the rise. You know, they were both in Ghostbusters together last summer. You know, if this category is kind of who gets in, you know, kind of a question marks all over the place, and who could challenge Kate McKinnon, that vote split under the new voting system, if Leslie Jones gets in, they are going to split some votes. And that's going to open the door potentially to a Judith Light or a Rita Moreno, or, you know, depending on who gets in. It's really going to be about the landscape of who gets in, and then you'll decide, okay, who could actually win now because of these specific 6. Which one of these stands out? Which one of these is
I think vote splitting
like
happens more in any show when there's not an obvious choice from that show. I don't know that Kate's going to be hurt by anybody from SNL. That's just my guess. Like, look at remember, vote splitting did have an impact, but then you get a category like where Sterling K. Brown won, and he was the obvious choice, you know, from that one show. So I think
I picked John Travolta.
I picked you, Lori.
I have Kate winning, but Judith Light, man, if Kate was not in this race, I think Judith Light would take it. She had such a great year, capped off by a fantastic finale where she actually sings a song and it's all about her. But
I don't know that they're watching anything though.
I
think they're better served. Here's the thing I would say that I've learned in the last couple of years since they, you know, essentially done away with episodes meaning as much. You're much better off if you're on a show that a decent number of people watch anyway. You're not relying on them to watch during voting. So you couldn't get away from, in this particular case, an SNL, even if you saw it online on YouTube or people sharing it on Twitter or something, Facebook, something like that. You couldn't get away from seeing at least a little bit of Kate McKinnon or Alec Baldwin this past year. I think it's going to hurt. And Anna Klumsky, it could help because I think voters are watching Veep. You know, that's the kind of show they're watching. Are they watching Transparent anymore? Are they watching Kimmy Schmidt, you know, like I do? Are they even watching One Day at a Time? I don't know. But we do know some shows that that's why I think Game of Thrones has been helped so much, is that viewers were watching that anyway. They didn't have to sign a form that said they were watching it during voting.
Well, at the same time, you do have shows like Baskets. It's hard to know how many people were actually watching Baskets last year, and it won. Orphan Black, probably 4 people in the Academy, I would have guessed.
That's true.
Had watched that. What's interesting?
I wouldn't say what I just said isn't like a total. But I think that if you're like in an even playing field, I think that can help if they're watching something anyway.
Yeah, that's definitely true. One of the interesting things about the comedy categories, I keep looking at these comedy acting categories, and I keep thinking, is SNL really going to win 4 out of the 6? Because I feel like that's the way the wind is blowing in terms of our predictions, and I feel like that doesn't seem likely.
I just noticed that in my own predictions. I have Kate and Alec winning supporting. I have Melissa McCarthy and Tom Hanks winning guest. So I don't think that's going to happen. So I need to start thinking of where I can move things around.
Well, we are making changes if people want to look on a regular basis. I am, at least, and I think most everybody on our team is. But after July 13th, and we'll get the new prediction center up, you'll see I'll be making a lot of adjustments based on what we talked about earlier: overperforming, underperforming. Ultimately, you know, what episodes are chosen. If I'm really stuck, we do know some people do watch, especially if that's where you can be helped. If it is, let's say it was Baskets last year with Louis Anderson, and just enough people were like, well, I never saw this when it was on. I could at least spend 22 minutes with it now. That's where a voting process might have helped him.
I think Titus Burgess had his best season yet, if we want to switch to comedy supporting actor. And I think I told you, Chris, that he was in so much of it, he could even legitimately go lead this year. That's how important he was to the story and all the different. I think he was in every episode, which isn't true for Jane or Carol. But he had the big.
And got in his SAG this year, which is virtually impossible for a supporting person.
And he has the Lemonade episode. I think it's episode 2, where if tapes matter, he could win for that.
Yeah, and if voters are only watching the first few, for instance, then they'll see it. So that's another important factor. We've seen that happen a lot of time. I remember the Arrested Development reboot on Netflix. We saw like the people from the first episode or 2 get in, and then nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Well, this is the category we just mentioned. I don't think Alex is safe as Kate is because, well, 2 things. One is he's not got the greatest Hollywood reputation or New York reputation among people even within the industry. He's just not as well liked as a lot of people are. But then secondly, you've got Titus, who's not won before. Who's going to have a great episode to submit. Then you've got the three most recent winners, Louis Anderson, Tony Hale, Ty Burrell, potentially in there. So we know that voters like them a lot.
And Louis Anderson has won under the system.
Yeah, Louis, I mean, they've all three won this category. They're the most three recent people that have won this category, right? So if they all get in, and then Matt Walsh I've got in, but an Andre Braugher certainly still makes sense. Although he seems to be the only nomination for that show.
I think it won stunts, right? It won best stunts, or am I confusing that with something?
Yeah, I think you're right. And a lot of people in our actual fifth place in the odds is Brian Tyree Henry. I could see him getting in over, say, a Matt Walsh. I'm not sure about the other five. After that, though, it starts to drop off a little bit in terms of who's available that they might actually go with.
Right.
I keep playing around with my sixth slot. I have a Baldwin, Burgess, Anderson, Hale, and Walsh getting back in, and then that sixth slot I can't decide. Right now I have Lawrence Fishburne in there, but I think maybe they could pull in another Veep guy. Timothy Simons could get another spot in there.
He's having a good season.
Brian Tyree. And of course, anyone in my numbers 1 through 5 spots could be vulnerable as well, for all I know. But it's that sixth spot I keep playing around with. I feel like something interesting could happen there.
Let me throw a couple of names out. Don't ever sleep when somebody's like a real front runner in another show, another category, another place. Sometimes they get just name checked, and he's good on the show. John Lithgow could get in here for Trial and Error.
That was such a good show. I hope everyone goes out and watches it, especially if you're a voter.
We've seen that many times where, look at Laurie Metcalf last year, got in 3 places. And a couple of them were real surprises. I mean, I think most everybody was predicting her for Horace and Pete, or possibly Big Bang Theory, but not was it Getting On? Was that the name of the show? Bobby Cannavale is like a Hank Azaria. He just, whenever he's eligible, he gets in. And somehow or another, he's eligible for supporting for Master of None, a show that is probably going to be in for comedy series. So, potentially they are watching that. That was a couple I wanted to mention just that are way down at the bottom of the rankings and maybe shouldn't be. And I had TJ Miller finally getting in for a long time. I don't think his announced departure from the show actually helps him in my mind in some way. I don't know why. Sometimes that helps, but it almost feels like to me, if I was a voter, I'm like, you're leaving a hit show, I'm not going to mark you.
In this case, it felt like the departure, and I don't know what the exact story is behind it, but it didn't feel just like, story purposes, or I'm just leaving the show.
Felt like something was going on.
Yeah, and that sort of leaves a questionable taste in, it's like, does Silicon Valley want him nominated? Does he want to be nominated for this show under these circumstances, whatever the exact circumstances of him leaving the show happen to be?
We have time to do the guest categories if you guys want to. It's a lot of SNL people as usual, but there's also Carrie Fisher, which is interesting because she was in Catastrophe. She filmed it just a couple months before she passed away. You have The Big Bang Theory, Mothers coming back, Christine Baranski and Laurie Metcalf. Angela Bassett had a great episode of Master of None, a big Thanksgiving flashback episode. She's in almost every scene. What do you think, Chris, about comedy guest actress? You're the one that had to enter all of these candidates. It took you days.
Yeah, I know. If anybody hasn't predicted them yet, all of the we added the 4 after the ballots came out last week. It took me a few days, but we've got the 4 guest categories, 2 reality and 2 variety that are now eligible to predict. Since she first made an appearance, we felt like Melissa McCarthy potentially would be here if she would only host an episode, and then she, because I don't think they would have even submitted her for doing like 1 sketch here and there. But then she, as we predicted, suddenly was hosting one there in May. So it almost seemed like it was aimed for this reason. And she's gotten in, I think, every time she's hosted, right?
Every single, yeah, this is her 5th time, and she's been nominated for all 4 previous times.
I think she feels like she would be the winner. I think I could certainly see Carrie Fisher, but I've done articles about posthumous nominations before, and it doesn't translate like you'd think it would. Not even somebody like recently, like a Catherine Justin, who had won twice.
Well, here's where that's different. It's the voting system that, you know, when you
we haven't had it happen under this voting system. You're absolutely right. It's not necessarily a show that they watch, though. But I don't think it matters with somebody like a Carrie Fisher. Her family, you know, would obviously represent her there, want her to win, and many people would want her to win. Their best hope is that 2 or 3 SNL guest hosts get in, I think. And I've got Kristen Wiig also getting in. I think Lori and Christine come back from Big Bang Theory. They've proven over and over that they can get in for this category. So that's 5. And I've got Laura Dern for Kimmy Schmidt. She's kind of this year's Laurie Metcalf in that she's got several projects, and she's probably getting in for Big Little Lies no matter what. And she was in, what, the 2nd episode or 3rd episode of the season? So that helps that she was in so early and really dominated that episode. A lot of people are predicting Angela Bassett. She's in 4th place. I had Becky Ann Baker for Girls, kind of in a Peter Scolari way. After that, it kind of drops off. I think it drops off a good bit after that.
Well, the interesting thing about this category, well, for Becky Ann Baker to get in, then she'll need to not get in, and then have one of these women disqualified, and so then she'll get in.
Right.
But what's interesting is I think this could be a category of name checks. In a lot of cases, I have Melissa McCarthy winning. I have Carrie Fisher getting in. Then you could see Christine Baranski and Laurie Metcalf both getting in for Big Bang Theory, just kind of inertia. They just keep getting in for these roles. And then, you know, you've got some names that the Emmy voters are just like, they kind of see them on the ballot and they get in a lot of times. You know, Alfre Woodard and Joan Cusack in A Series of Unfortunate Events. It could be a kind of situation where I think that show could get in a lot below the line. I don't think it's going to get in a lot in, you know, comedy actor sort of thing. So we could see like an Alfre Woodard get in as like one of the only top nominations for A Series of Unfortunate Events, just because she's the only top nomination for a lot of shows. Like True Blood, they nominated her for that, and she was in that for like 15 seconds.
That's true.
So
if they get a Z to A ballot, she'll be within the first 3 or 4 names they see.
Yeah, so I think she definitely has a shot, and Cusack. I have them both in at the moment. I'm sort of playing around with things. I only have Melissa McCarthy getting in from SNL at the moment, which is quite different from comedy guest actor. I think there could legitimately be 5 Saturday Night Live nominees for best comedy guest actor.
Which 5?
All of them? No. I think I'm predicting 4 at the moment. But I could swap it. I have Aziz getting in. I have Dave Chappelle getting in, Tom Hanks, and Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon, I think, might be vulnerable. I could easily see them bringing in Lin-Manuel Miranda. Or all 5 could get in. Like, I can see a scenario where, because this is not such a strong category where I look at other candidates and, you know, they have to knock somebody out. It's like, this feels like a pretty open field, and we know they like SNL hosts.
Currently have Tom Hanks winning, but I'm starting to think about Peter McNichol. The Emmys owe him after what happened last year. I won't go into the whole story, but his nomination got rescinded, and Peter Scolari ended up getting his nomination and winning. So Peter McNichol has a massive IOU. It's not enough to get nominated. He needs to actually win. So I may actually predict Peter McNichol.
Well, at least
I've got him in there. I've got him winning.
I have him getting nominated, but I mean, if he has an Emmy, he has an Emmy at least. You know, if you're just looking at Veep, talk about Emmy IOUs. Hugh Laurie
that's true.
has an even bigger one since he doesn't even have that trophy. At least Peter McNichol could curl up with his Ally McBeal Emmy and, you know, console himself after the whole thing last year. But Hugh Laurie is still waiting, and this is his first time going in guest, and he's got that shot. It could be he could Amy Poehler this, where after years and years of trying, he finally wins as a guest. Yeah, we could see that happen. I'm currently predicting Hugh Laurie, but yeah, this category feels like wide open. Like I'm not gonna know who I'm gonna ultimately predict until I see the nominees, because
I've got 4 SNL hosts, which is really rare for me. I don't usually. I cannot figure out which of the 4 to take out. I got Jimmy Fallon, Tom Hanks, Dave Chappelle, Lin-Manuel Miranda. They're all very popular, and they've all been on streaks lately in terms of, well, maybe not Tom Hanks, but he's always good and everything. This is the first time he's hosted since they've allowed SNL guest hosts in all these, the past however long it's been, 8 years or whatever.
And he's never
won performing Emmy.
He's never even been nominated for a performing Emmy, which is what's surprising. Like he's won like 6 as a producer and a director, but like he hasn't done much TV acting. So.
And of the other SNL hosts you mentioned, his sketch where he played David S. Pumpkins, that's the one that went viral. Everyone knows that sketch. So it's kind of like what we said with Kate McKinnon. Like even if you don't watch SNL, you know she's on it, you know who she plays. Same thing with Tom Hanks.
Well, a couple of others we didn't mention. I don't have Hugh Laurie in even, and you've got him winning, but I might change my mind. I just don't know who to take out on the SNL host. Matthew Rhys would not be a shocker for girls. John Hamm got in the first year for Kimmy Schmidt, and he's all over that first episode this year. Riz Ahmed could get in for girls. So again, some of the people I'm naming are going to be up in other categories, so sometimes they just kind of get caught up in the tide of getting in, for something like this as well.
Yeah, the Gabby Hoffman effect, I'm going to call that.
Right. Laurie Metcalf we mentioned. Bradley Whitford gets in regularly in this category for Transparent. And this year he's up for Mom, where he's co-starring with his former West Wing star, Allison Janney. Steve Buscemi's been in this category before for Portlandia. Ray Liotta was very funny on Kimmy Schmidt. Fred Willard's been up in this category for Modern Family. Haley Joel Osment's the only Silicon Valley person from this category. Anyway, my ride's here. No, and then there's just people. Could a Kyle MacLachlan get in for Portlandia after playing the mayor all these seasons, just because Twin Peaks is airing here in the summertime? Look, there's a lot of good ones in this category, I think. And I didn't. On SNL, I didn't even put Aziz Ansari. He's another one, just because he has the other show, his own show, that could get swept into this mix.
Then you've got David Diggs, who's got 2 shows, and I think he'd be likelier to get in for Blackish if he gets in for that, or the other show he's in, Kimmy Schmidt. He's Tony winner last year for Hamilton. He could be nominated against Lin-Manuel Miranda, which would be quite fun.
Well, thank you everyone for watching. This was going to be 20 minutes. I think it ended up being 5 hours long. So if you made it to the end, we really appreciate it. And stick with Gold Derby. We're going to have more Slugfest, more predictions. The Emmy nominations are coming out very, very soon. Thanks.